What's happening? Thanks for joining me as always. It is very much appreciated on this Friday afternoon, straight from the 98.5 studios to my home studio. I have a lot of Drake Maye to talk about. Before we get there, don't forget to give us that thumbs up. Like the channel on YouTube always means a lot. That's how we karate chop that algorithm. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. We get a number of comments that have been thrown in the last couple of days, and it really does make a difference. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Spotify, Apple Pods, you know the deal by now. Rate and review. I want to start with Drake Maye and the handling of Maye last night in that game. You go back to last week, and I couldn't really figure out what the Patriots were doing by playing Drake Maye one series against the Carolina Panthers in the first preseason game. It did not make much sense to me. At the time I mentioned I thought it would make more sense to start Drake Maye in that game. Give him both series behind that starting offensive line. That would make a lot of sense. Then we got to the joint practice. Not one series for Drake Maye behind that starting offensive line. And I did that podcast on Tuesday, and I was frustrated. I did not understand the plan, and I still don't understand why the Patriots did what they did last week against Carolina and what they did this week at the joint practice with Maye. He should have been getting at least one series, if not a couple of series at that joint practice with the ones. And he should have certainly started that game against Carolina, because I don't think one series for Jacoby Brissett, being a 7-8 year veteran, is going to make that much of a difference. Then we get to last night. And I've got to tell you, I felt the exact opposite last night in the handling of Maye as I did throughout the last week. I thought last night's plan made a lot of sense. The first drive, you have 4 of the 5 starting offensive linemen out there with Drake Maye, right? His first drive, everybody but David Andrews is out there to protect your franchise quarterback. Then you get to the second and third drives. You had Vidarian Lowe, yikes, City So, and then you had Leverett, Robinson, and Wallace from center to the right. So you still had 2 starting offensive linemen. You had Leverett, who has done a pretty good job. Wasn't great last night, but has done a pretty good job up until this point, being the backup center. Layden Robinson has had one heck of a camp. And Caden Wallace has been up and down, but it's not like he's been a disaster. So you look at that offensive line, and it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense with what they did through the first 3 drives. Not only did they keep at least 2 starters out there for most of the time that Drake Maye was playing quarterback in front of him, they also allowed Maye to play with the young wide receivers. Fantastic. This is what I wanted to see. Jalen Polk was out there for a number of snaps. Javon Baker was out there for a number of snaps. Kayshon Boutte played a number of snaps. So the idea of having Drake Maye with at least 2, if not more, starting offensive linemen in front of him, Polk, Baker, Boutte. Perfect. Now, I shouldn't say perfect. Pop Douglas would have been even better, but of course, you've got to limit Pop's activity because of his injury history, the concussion history, so I get it. I would have loved to see Pop out there a little bit more, but I totally understand. So when you have Polk, Baker, and Boutte out there with at least some of that starting offensive line, that is a much better situation and scenario for Maye. And you saw it. You saw it through his play. You had Jaheim Bell mixed in at tight end, and it really gave a chance for Drake Maye and the rest of those guys to make some plays, but especially Maye. And if Javon Baker played better last night, we'd be talking about an even bigger game from Drake Maye. If Baker could stay in bounds, you might have a big play down the sidelines, right? That was a perfect throw from Maye. We all know the play down the middle of the field. So if Baker could come up with a couple of, catches in that game last night on deep balls down the sideline and down the middle of the field, I mean, the Drake Maye performance would have been even better. The counting statistics would have been even better. I also like the fact that they played Drake Maye as much as they did. He got the second quarter. He got the third quarter. He got 4 drives. 4 drives. Reps. That's what Drake Maye has needed, right? He has needed reps. Live bullet reps. He didn't get them against Carolina. He didn't get a ton against, Philly as far as against the top line defense. And I know that Philly did not have their top line defense out there last night against Maye, but still the idea of getting 2 full quarters in, getting 4 drives under his belt with some of that starting offensive line and those young skill position players, that's exactly what I wanted to see. And I am nothing but not fair, right? I look at this and I say to myself, I try to be as fair as possible. Patriots, I thought, deserved all the criticism that they got for the way they handled the young quarterback against Carolina. They deserved all the criticism that I gave them earlier this week, my frustration about what they did or didn't do with Maye at the joint practice. But last night, they deserve credit. I criticize when I think things deserve the criticism. I give credit when I believe the team or the player deserves the credit. And last night, I thought the handling of Maye was done really well by the Patriots. Really, really well. And I also loved seeing the fact that the Patriots and Alex Van Pelt allowed Maye to open it up a little bit, right? They opened up the playbook a little bit for Maye. The read option on the touchdown, something that Maye did an awful lot at UNC. Taking deep shots down the field, let it rip, show that arm. So the handling, the play calling, it was so much better last night than compared to what we saw against Carolina last week and what we saw at the joint practice on Tuesday. I've got a lot more here. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review Vitalics with a $10 super chat. Would Kendrick Bourne or Pop, I'm guessing it's Bourne, have come down with those passes Baker dropped? I'm just thinking of Maye, Hunter Henry, Bourne, and Pop. Exciting. I've talked about Javon Baker on this podcast, right? Number of times. And I've used the same term over and over and over with him as I've been watching practice. Boom or bust. That's Javon Baker. Boom or bust. And you saw some of that last night, right? He had the big third down play on the in cut, the first conversion that Drake Maye had last night in the second quarter. And then you saw some of the stuff that's the bust type of stuff. Getting pushed out of bounds by the defensive back. Not good enough. Dropping the football on that absolute dime down the middle of the field. Little bit of alligator arm action on another throw from Maye. And yes, Maye could have made a better throw, but Baker did not want any part of that smoke. So you see it. Boom or bust. I think Javon Baker's highs are going to be very high. He's going to have those games where you go, oh my goodness, I can't believe he just came down with that catch. I can't believe that's a freaky touchdown. He's going to have those games. He's going to have those 4 catches, $150 and a touchdown. He'll have maybe a couple of those this year. But he will also have very frustrating moments where you want to pull out your hair because you know how talented he can be. And that's been Baker during this camp. His highs have been some of the highest that we've seen. His highlights at camp have been some of the best highlights of this camp. But he has days where he just disappears or he fails to do the small things. He drops a couple of footballs. It's going to be a little bit maddening if Baker plays in the regular season the way he's played in camp in the preseason, and you have to imagine that's just who he is right now. So be ready. You will be frustrated by Baker. The good news is he has a lot of talent, and that's what will frustrate you. Some of the other stuff, it'll bug you a bit. It will bug you a bit. Now, as far as Bourne or Pop, Pop's a different receiver, you know. That's difficult for him. He doesn't run a lot of deep routes. He's not necessarily the high point kind of guy because of his frame. He's not the biggest dude, right? Hunter Henry, same thing. I mean, Hunter Henry, I think he has better hands than Baker. Could Henry make a play down the seam? Sure, but I don't think you're going to see Henry making that, diving spectacular catch that Baker had a chance to make last night. And as far as Bourne, I do believe I would trust Bourne more than Baker, yes. And those are some of those routes that Kendrick Bourne would run. Appreciate the $10 super chat, Vitalics. Don't forget, if you want your comment or question heard, throw in a super chat. I will plop it up on the screen and we'll talk about it. All right, it's time to get Maye, in my estimation, snaps with the ones at practice. And this absolutely has to be a legitimate competition. No more screwing around. I don't need to see Maye get all the snaps with the ones, right? But after last night's game, it is time that Drake Maye gets taken seriously within this competition between he and Jacoby Brissett. I'll tell you a number of reasons why. Outside of just his play last night, his performance last night, it is time to have a legitimate quarterback competition because, number one, Drake Maye is progressing, and we have seen that. The footwork. How about the slide to the left in the pocket and then the step up on that deep throw down the middle of the field to Baker, right? How about that footwork? How about some of the footwork on the screen to watch out for the danger? How about the perfect footwork that we saw on the Baker in cut? The footwork is cleaner. He has progressed. The other thing I like is that Maye took the profits last night. That's something that Evan Lazar talks about a lot, right? Taking the profits. Take your profits, which means if there's an easy play to be made, make the easy play and move the hell on. And we saw that from Maye last night. Now, the scramble on his first drive, he could have waited a little bit longer and might have been able to throw that football for a bigger gain. But I thought last night he did mostly a good job of taking the profits. He didn't force stuff, right? He did not force it into tight windows. He was not trying to do too much. If he had to throw the football away, he'd get out of the pocket, he'd throw the football away. This stuff sounds simple, but remember, Maye is very raw. He was a projection type pick. He's somebody that has to work on the fundamentals. So when you see the footwork looking better, that's a great thing. When you see him taking the profits, not trying to do too much, throwing the football away, getting out of the pocket and just chucking it out of bounds, that's what you want to see. And there were really no procedural issues. Now, I know, I believe Mayo said that he wants Drake Maye to get in and out of the huddle a little bit quicker and be more efficient, but there were no delay of game penalties. There were no, we got to take a timeout because Maye's taking forever. There was none of that kind of stuff. So he's getting better from a procedure standpoint, getting the guys together, getting in and out of the huddle, getting to the line of scrimmage. He made some adjustments at the line of scrimmage. You saw that, right? Motioning to receivers, changing the play here and there. You know, he's doing some of that stuff at the line of scrimmage. It's this progression that you see. So that's reason one why this has to be a legitimate competition from now until the regular season kicks off. Reason number two is just because of what we've known, Maye has special talent. You know, Jacoby Brissett is a good NFL quarterback. I know he struggled last night, and I'll get into that in a minute. But overall, Brissett is a good NFL quarterback. He ain't great. He's not terrible. He's average. He's good. He's okay. He's fine. He doesn't have that top-tier talent that Maye has. He doesn't have the top-tier physical traits that Maye has. Maye has a stronger arm. Maye has much more ability to extend plays and create things out of nothing in the off-platform plays. You know, last night's screen, that screen to Hasty, seems like a simple play. I don't think Jacoby Brissett is capable of making that play. Mac Jones is certainly not capable of making that play. Drake Maye, to me, is the only guy on this roster that could make that play on that screen pass. He's got the rush coming. He had to quickly backpedal, and he kind of jumped, right? He did this like little jump and kind of sidearm toss to Hasty on the screen pass, and then he got smacked in the face by the defensive lineman. It's a simple play. It looks simple, but when you break it down and you look at the athleticism, the subtle athleticism, the ability to change the angle on the throw, the off-platform kind of stuff, even the throw deep down to Baker, down the middle of the field, he has to slide the pocket left. He's going to step up, flick of the wrist, arm talent, down the field, dime. So the top-end talent, that raw special talent, no doubt Maye has more of that than Brissett. He has more athleticism than Brissett. I mean, when you play against Maye, it's like playing against an extra skill position player because his ability to beat you, get out of the pocket, run with the football, do different things. Reason number three, Why this absolutely has to be an open competition from today, this moment, August 16th, 4:15 Eastern Time, 2024 is the year. This has to be an open competition for QB1 at this point because of how Jacoby Brissett has played the last week or so. Maye has progressed. Maye played well last night. Meanwhile, Brissett has taken a step back. Early camp, Brissett looked good. He started to look really good in stretches. But he was not good against Carolina. He wasn't good at Monday's practice. He was absolutely not good at the joint practice. And last night, he wasn't good. Red zone, end zone interception. Misses Hooper down the field by the right sideline. Made a decision. Yes, it was Vidarian Lowe who allowed the pressure, but made the decision to try to make a late throw that was behind the receiver. I think it was Pop. Could have been another interception. Brissett in the last week, he has taken a step back. Now he can take a step forward. That's how some of these things work at times, right? He could certainly come back and play better. But when you look at from the Carolina game to last night, Brissett has not played well enough. He does not deserve to hold the keys to the QB1 job right now. What he has earned from his play the last week is to get pushed by the rookie quarterback. And that's precisely what should happen. That's how this coaching staff should handle it. You should have Maye pushing Brissett. You should make this a competition because Brissett has not played well enough to keep that job. He has not earned it. Make him earn it. Number 4, I thought Maye looked more comfortable and confident last night. He looked more comfortable and confident than he did at these practices. He looked more poised. And I think that's because he knew he had better protection in front with that offensive line, and he had a better chance with Baker and Polk out there than some of the guys he has been given to throw to at these practices. And so with the skill position players and with an offensive line that I think he could have trusted or did trust more than some of the other guys that have been in front of him, the confidence was there. The comfort was there. Some would say the swag was there, right? That Drake Maye swag that he shows with the media at times. It was there last night. And it looks like he's the guy that if he gets more reps, he gets more comfort, he gets more confident, everything kind of settles down. Now, it's not perfect. He was not perfect. High throw to Booty, not great. Talked about the scramble earlier, right? The bad snap. I put that snap more on Maye than I put it on Leverett because if you watch the replay, Drake Maye's not even watching it get into his hands. He doesn't even watch it into his hands. He's like looking away. He's all scatterbrained. So it wasn't perfect, but he's young. I don't expect it to be perfect, especially when it's, the first legitimate playing time that he's getting at the NFL level. So it wasn't perfect, but it was much better. And there's no doubt in my mind, like if I'm Jerod Mayo, if I'm Alex Van Pelt, Drake Maye earned more reps last night. He earned more reps with the ones. He earned more reps with that offensive line. He earned it. I don't think he earned being the starting quarterback last night. I'm not saying make Drake Maye the starting quarterback in week 1. All I'm saying is the way he played last night, when he was given a chance with better players, the way he played last night, that should absolutely get him into this competition against Brissett, especially with Brissett taking a step back. That gap, you go back 2 or 3 weeks ago, the gap was pretty wide between Brissett and Maye. And that was a lot to do with Brissett just playing pretty damn well at practice. He was making some great throws at practice. Well, now that gap has, I think, shrunk. A combination of two things. It has shrunk because Maye stepped up last night and because Brissett has not played nearly at the same level as he did earlier in camp. So tighten it up. I've got more reasons why it's time for Drake Maye to be a part of a legitimate quarterback competition. First, let's get to a Backyard Cyclist $20 super chat. Appreciate you, Backyard. Thank you so much. Heard you on 98.5 today. Loved it until the this or that segment. Pro tip as a Desert Storm veteran, 0 survival skills. Pick the raft with the hopes to drift into a shipping lane. Survival skills, go desert. Kind of confused. So are you saying I should have picked the desert? If you didn't watch me on 98.5 today or listen to me, we had a this or that segment, and it was, would you rather be stranded in a desert island or whatever, desert, or would you rather be stranded in the ocean on a raft? I picked the ocean, the raft. I felt like the guys that were on the show, they were picking against me on purpose to just disagree with me. So I think there was some of that. There was some shenanigans going on. But if you noticed, if you did listen or you watched today's show, the callers, I got the majority of the callers on my side. So what's that tell you? Appreciate the $20 super chat, Backyard Cyclist. Backyard Cyclist also a part of the Patreon page that I run, which is pretty cool. If you guys want to check it out, $5 a month, $1.25 a week, exclusive content at the Patreon page. We do an audio mailbag every other week, every other Tuesday. We do an off-the-cuff podcast on Friday, which is national sports stuff, radio stuff, personal stuff, music, pop culture. We also do a Wednesday podcast that is Boston sports specific. So $5 a month, $1.25 a week, patreon.com/Nick Cattles. While I'm at it, another plug. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. When you like this podcast on YouTube, it sends it to more people. That's how we beat the algorithm. Takes a second of your time, doesn't cost you anything. Give us that thumbs up. Also, comments are good. Throw your comments in while you're watching right now. If you catch up later on demand over the weekend, throw your comment in. That helps the engagement. That's how these things work. I wish I didn't have to sit here and push it, but I got to push it to get more eyeballs on the product. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review over at Spotify and Apple Pods. My Spotify people stepping up with some comments as well. So I always appreciate that. All right, 2 more reasons why Drake Maye has earned the right to be a part of a legitimate quarterback competition after last night. You don't play until August 25th. You're going to have several practices, right? I think that they're back on the field tomorrow. You're going to have several practices. You get that extra time. You played on Thursday night. You don't play until Sunday night. That gives you some extra time. That gives you 1 or 2 extra practices. Make the best use out of those extra practices. You'll have more reps. More reps should mean more reps with the ones for Maye. Split the reps 50-50 the first couple of practices with the ones. See how Maye looks versus Brissett. Start there, right? Start there. Split the reps for the first day or 2. See what the rookie looks like. And then you progress from there if he deserves that progression. You've got a couple extra days of practice. Use them wisely. Get those reps in. My final point here about getting Maye into this legitimate competition for QB1 is, how does it hurt? How does it hurt Drake Maye? If you put him out there, you give him a shot, you give him this, legitimate competition, he either rises to the challenge and leapfrogs Jacoby Brissett, therefore earning the starting job, or you gave him an opportunity to earn that starting job, and even if he fell short, you still gave him a shot, right? You still gave him a shot. It's not going to hurt. Get him some snaps. See how he responds. Force Jacoby Brissett to respond. Put the heat on Jacoby. Let Jacoby know he can't put his feet up and just win this job. I don't think he feels that way. I don't think Jacoby would, approach it that way. But just make sure. Make sure you draw that line. You're not just going to waltz in, put your feet up, and everything is swell. You've got to earn this gig. I don't see anything bad coming out of heading into practice tomorrow, the next couple practices. I don't see any damage that could be done by giving Maye the opportunity to rep with the ones. Split it with Brissett. That's what I would do. And that's what I hope the Patriots will do. All right, let's talk about some other Patriots from last night's game, the good and the bad, that were not by the name of Drake Maye. Let's start with the downs, because this has mostly been positive. So let's start with the downs, and then we'll end on a positive because it's a Friday. And I can't wait to go and have a couple of beers so I could just go right back tomorrow to 98.5 The Sports Hub I'll be doing a show tomorrow on 98.5 from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. So you want to check that out. Solo, headlines, that whole spiel. So before I bid you adieu, we got some ups and downs from last night. We'll look at some certain players, right? Some groupings as well. We'll end on the positive. We'll go to the negative right now. All right. Calvin Anderson, Antonio Mafi. Awful. No other way to put it. Awful. Anderson, and I give him credit for being out there. I give him credit for trying to get back, and maybe he'll start to figure things out. But all I can tell you is Anderson has been brutal. You go back to last week, he wasn't good at practice. He wasn't good against Carolina. The joint practice, he was a mess. I would argue he was the worst offensive lineman during that joint practice. And if he wasn't the worst, he was right behind the worst. And then last night, he wasn't good. Anderson is having a tough time. Antonio Mafi, he can't snap when they give him the center job. He can't block when they give him the guard job. He was brutal last night. Joe Milton had no chance on God's green earth to do much of anything with Mafi out there. Antonio Mafi, he's raw. He started as a defensive lineman. He's not there. He's just not there. Anderson and Mafi, just not there. I mean, Joe Milton's last drive was a train wreck. I tweeted out last night. You want to know why Drake Maye, it wasn't fair to evaluate Drake Maye during the joint practice? You saw it last night. Joe Milton's drive, right? Joe Milton's last drive of that game last night. If you go back, you watch that offensive line play, 5-alarm fire in front of Milton. That's exactly what Drake Maye had to deal with, snap in and snap out against the Eagles, especially his last two 11-on-11 periods. 12 snaps, 6 sacks, 1 bad snap, pocket collapse. 8 out of 12 snaps in that joint practice to finish his day. He had no chance in hell to do anything because the offensive line was straight up garbage. You saw it last night with Milton. It's not Drake Maye. It's not Joe Milton. When your offensive line is crumbling and as soon as you get the football, somebody's hunting you, you're not going to have a lot of success. And if you've listened to this podcast long enough, you know. If you've been listening to the podcast the last week, shoot, if you're listening for the first time today, welcome. Come on in. Water is warm. Beer is cold. Enjoy yourself on a Friday. But if you've been listening for a while, you know what I've said. I've said that I have no idea what to tell you about Drake Maye. I can't evaluate Drake Maye through some of these practices because he just really has no chance at times. I can't tell you. I said this, I think it was earlier in the week. I can't tell you if Drake Maye is far behind, if he's behind, if he's ahead of the game, if he's where he should be. There's no telling because of the offensive line play and because of, the guys that are around him dropping footballs. So I have, Bedard's my guy, buddy of mine, work with him on the podcast. But I would disagree with Bedard when he came out on Felger and Maz on Tuesday and said something along the lines of like Drake Maye is far behind right now. I don't know how anybody could say that Drake Maye at that point was far behind. I couldn't evaluate the guy. So you saw some of that last night. Anderson, Mafi, the backup center exchanges. What the hell's going on? Now, again, one of the fumbles, one of the bad snaps, one of the bad exchanges, I put it on Drake Maye. But you still had 2 or 3 other bad snaps. You had the one snap from Fornadell that ended the game. Sweet snap, bro. He just snapped it pretty much shotgun style right into the dirt. So that's been a problem. That was part of the problem with Drake Maye at practice. Mafi, I've said it on this podcast, right? Mafi, he didn't play center last night, but shotgun snaps from Antonio Mafi. No idea where they're going. I think Tom Curran called them like zip code snaps or whatever the hell he called them. Sometimes down at the feet, sometimes over the head, sometimes left, sometimes right, all over the map. He's like snapping it to a region, and sometimes he couldn't even get it into the region. And last night, you saw some of the other guys. Leverett had a tough night. He had a bad snap. Then Maye, the exchange, that was on Maye. And then you had the Fornadell snap right into the dirt. They got to figure this out. Now, Leverett's mostly been good, and David Andrews is David Andrews, but they don't want to have any injuries at that center position. You got to cross your fingers that Andrews is able to stay healthy. And you absolutely don't want to go through a scenario where both Andrews and Leverett are out for any extended period of time, because that would be a disaster. With that said, I don't know how many NFL teams have 3 good centers on their roster, right? A lot of teams, when you get down to the third center, it's not going to be great. So the quarterback center exchange outside of David Andrews has to get better. The run blocking has to get better. Last night, the best run plays that we saw with the top unit, it's like 98% due to Rhamondre Stevenson. Stevenson's contact balance, his ability to take hits and somehow, some way stay on his feet to get the extra 3 or 4 yards. The McCourties talked about it last night. That is Stevenson at his best. But the run blocking needs to be better. You need to give Stevenson a better chance before he gets popped by somebody. A lot of that good run yardage early on, that was all Stevenson pretty much. And looking at the practices, being at practice, the joint practice, I have highlighted this. Throughout these practices, the Patriots have had issues running the football. The only guy that's popped was Stevenson. At the joint practice, they could not run the ball. It's like almost all the run plays outside of Rhamondre Stevenson were stuffed runs or like 2-yard gains. Stevenson popped one that I thought, if you're playing an actual game, I think Stevenson had a chance to go to the house with it for 50, 60 yards. He popped a big run. He popped a couple of other big runs. Stevenson has looked great. Get to him in a minute. But, the blocking up front, you should not have to depend on your running back to make all the plays. So those guys got to do better blocking up front. They have to. It needs to improve. This is an offense that relies on run game. We've heard it from the head coach. We've heard it from players. We've heard it from Alex Van Pelt. They want to run the football. They want to establish the run. And if you can't do that, you're going to have a much tougher time with this offense. So they need to get those guys up front blocking better for the run game. Marcellus Dial, rough night. Rough night for the rookie. I thought he got picked on. Philly kept attacking him. He didn't have really any answers. It was a really rough night for Marcellus Dial. There was a run play in the game where he kind of got stuck in traffic inside. The run went outside. He looked completely lost. He was responsible for the 2-point conversion that ended up winning the game for Philadelphia. So, hey, learning experience. 6th-round pick, defensive guy. I don't think they're going to have to rely on him much if he makes the roster. Learning experience for the young man, because that was brutal. That was brutal. Rough night for Marcellus Dial. We already talked about Javon Baker. I had him as a down last night. And this is non-Vidarian Lowe. Vidarian Lowe was a train wreck. He has no right to be out there playing left tackle exclusively. They need to start rotating Caden Wallace into that spot, because Lowe is a mess. He had a false start. He gave up the only 2 pressures the entire night from that offensive line. Both of them were on Vidarian Lowe. You had the chip play where, Harris is chipping to the outside. Some reason Vidarian Lowe just gives up inside leverage to the pass rusher. Vidarian Lowe was a nightmare last night. They need to start rotating people at that spot to push him, because he has not earned the left tackle spot in the last week. He has been mostly dreadful the last week. No, thank you. Let's get some competition for Vidarian. He needs it. And Brissett, we already talked about him. He wasn't great. Baker, we talked about him. Stay in bounds, running down the sideline. You can't allow the defensive back to push you out of bounds. You had the drop on that beautiful throw by Drake Maye down the middle. And I remind you, Javon Baker, boom or bust. All right, let's get to the ups. And this is going to be the non-Drake Maye ups, because we spent the first 20 minutes or so on Drake Maye of this podcast. I waxed poetic about the young man. He had a very good game. He now, I think, deserves to get into that competition with Brissett as a legitimate QB1 competition. See what he does the next week before you get into that next preseason game on Sunday the 25th against Washington. So Maye, Shout out to Drake Maye. I tweeted it last night. I don't know how you walk away from that game if you're a Patriots fan. I don't know how you could walk away from that game without a smile on your face after watching Maye and seeing some of that potential play out in front of your eyes. So these are going to be the non-Drake Maye ups that I saw last night. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. Give a like, give a thumbs up to this podcast for the four-man pass rush. Now, this was an interesting situation, right? You go back to the Carolina game, the Patriots blitzed more than any team in the first week of the preseason. Almost all of their pressure was because they were sending extra guys. Early on in the first half last night, it was more of the same. A lot of the pressure they got early was from sending extra guys. But then as the game went on, a much better job from the four-man rush. Now, some of that, of course, is that Philadelphia's offensive line, you're looking at the second, third string guys. It's easier to get pressure when you're going against those offensive linemen. But I would push back and say the Patriots also had a number of backups in the game, right? The four-man rush, Keion White, was fantastic last night. Give a thumbs up for Keion White. So Matthew Judon, no longer with us, down in Atlanta. Wish him luck. Was a great member of the team here for a few years. But all eyes were on Keion White last night. You just traded Judon. Everybody's looking at White to bring some of that pass rush presence. Now, we could have a conversation where maybe he is better in the interior of the defensive line versus being a defensive end with his skill set and getting after the quarterback. But last night, White wrecked shop. And that's exactly what you wanted to see, right? You wanted to see how White would respond to the Judon trade. He's out there. He was making plays. Keion White had a great night. Joshua Uche had a good night. Interestingly, Uche was out there late, and I had a number of people bombard me last night during the game saying, Nick, Uche's out there because he got into a scuffle. He got into a fight at joint practice. Not according to the head coach. This morning, Mayo said Uche getting those snaps in the third quarter had nothing to do with the scuffle. Now, Uche hasn't been out there a ton during camp, so I wonder if it was just, we got to get this guy going. We got to get him conditioned because he hasn't had as many snaps. He got tossed out of a practice. He got tossed out of the same practice that the whole Judon stuff happened that Monday when Judon was on the field, off the field, on the field, off the field, showing up everybody. That same day, Uche got kicked out of practice because he got into it with Chuks Okorafor. So he hasn't had a ton of snaps. He hasn't had as many snaps as some other guys on that defensive line. So I think it was probably Mayo and DeMarcus Covington making sure that Uche got a good amount of snaps last night so he can get his conditioning going so he can be ready for the regular season. That's my guess. He was good last night. Dietrich Wise, I feel like he's like old man reliable. He never does anything like super sexy. He's just consistent, and he's a good football player. Wise had a good night last night. He got home. O'Shane Ximines continues to show up on the pass rush. I've told you this. I'll say it again. Don't expect Ximines to be good against the run. That's not his deal. That's not his wheelhouse. Expect him, though, to be a terror getting after the quarterback. He's very similar to Uche. More of a sub-pass rusher, not great when it comes to, defending the edge, setting the edge. But if you throw him out there on a pass play, on a third and medium or third and long, and you tell O'Shane Ximines to get after the quarterback, my man is going to get after the quarterback. And he's also made a number of plays in the kick game. Last week against Carolina, he had that stick against the Panthers on a return. So I thought Ximines played well. And all that stuff is critical. No Matthew Judon to get pressure with your four-man rush. That's great. I thought it was really good to see White, Uche, Wise, Ximines, all those guys chipping in and getting some pressure when we just got off of that Judon trade. All right, another non-Drake Maye up from last night's game. It's Dre Day. We got to talk about Dre like it's the Chronic back in the day. Rhamondre Stevenson. I've said this a few times during this camp. Stevenson's been good, man. Rhamondre Stevenson has had a good camp. He lost some of that extra bulk. he's he's a little bit more cut. His frame's a little different, but he tightened up. His speed has looked there, considering it's all relative, but he looks like he's a little bit quicker. The one cut wide zone offense kind of stuff, he's done a good job with that. We saw him at Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley. They ran a similar offense, so he seems like a very good scheme fit. He's done a good job catching the football. He didn't do it last night, but at camp, he's done a good job catching the football. He's popped a number of runs at camp. And so he had one run against Carolina, right, that I remember. One run against Carolina last week. It was one of the first plays, if not the first offensive play. He bounced it outside, got 12 yards. And then last night, you saw Rhamondre Stevenson at his best. That balance, getting hit, spinning off the hit, getting an extra 4 or 5 yards, right? Getting those extra little bits of yardage. It's what he does. It's like natural to him. Finishing runs strong. The vision, again, in this wide zone, he seems like he's very comfortable with the vision. He knows what he's seeing in front of him. He knows what he has to do. He's had a good camp. He's had a very good camp. And he had a good night last night. And that's critical to the operation because what we talked about earlier with the run game, you're going to need a Rhamondre Stevenson who is running the football effectively. And I've been very happy with what I've seen from him in camp. I was very happy with what I saw from him last night. All right, let's get to the bigger picture, the operation. What do I mean by the operation? We talked about the Carolina game. There was roughly 775 penalties pre-snap against Carolina. When you go to the joint practice against Philadelphia, there were roughly 823 pre-snap penalties. Just flags all over the place. You guys see that GIF on Twitter when it's just a bunch of flags the guy's throwing? Pre-snap penalties have been a thing for the Patriots. They've been a thing at practice. They were certainly a thing against Carolina. Last night, fortunately, I have great news to report to you. They were not a thing. Last night against the Eagles, pre-snap penalties were not a thing. Do you know how many penalties were called on the Patriots last night? Can you venture to guess? You want to throw a comment in? Throw a comment in. How many penalties do you think were called on the Patriots? How many? Take a wild guess. I'm going to wait a minute while you guys catch up on this video and you throw it in there. While I wait, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. How many penalties? Steve, I see, says 4. T-Dub says 0. Lucky says he remembers 1. So, Lucky, you remembered 1. And that was because it was the only one. The Patriots had 1 penalty last night. That's stronger than a golf clap. 1 penalty last night. Good job. Good job, Alex Van Pelt. Good job, Jerod Mayo. Cleaning up the operation. More discipline. They had 8 or 9 penalties, I think, against Carolina. Against the Eagles in the joint practice, I think they had 9 or 10 penalties. Last night, 1 penalty. Clean up the operation. It was critical for me. It was one of the top things I was looking for last night, and they did it. 1 penalty. Good job by everybody involved. Coaching staff, players, good job. It was a different world from that standpoint. I thought they got in and out of the huddle much better. There was really no delay of game issues. There was a timely challenge by the coaching staff. So I thought overall the operation looked much more clean last night than what we have seen, which is good. Jerod Mayo, first time. Let's talk about Mayo. I had him in my non-Drake May up list. I had him on that list. I thought in the second half. Now, there's one beef I had with Mayo. It's kind of weird, right? One beef with Mayo. At the end of the first half last night, he did it again. What did he do? Do you guys remember? Do you gals remember what Mayo did at the end of the first half that would have frustrated me? Maybe it frustrated you. He did the same thing against Carolina in week 1 in that first preseason game. It's the end of the first half. He has timeouts in his back pocket. He has the opposing offense kind of stumbling in a very tough spot. Last week against Carolina, preseason game 1, Carolina's at their own 11-yard line looking at a 3rd and 5. Mayo had 2 timeouts. Mayo decided to not use a timeout. He just let Carolina kill the clock and go into the locker room. Last night, he did the same thing. Timeouts in the pocket. Getting closer to the end of the first half. You have Philadelphia at a very tough spot. You have an opportunity to call a timeout, get a football back, give the football to Drake Maye, let Drake Maye run no huddle. Get him some reps. They had a golden opportunity to get their rookie quarterback out there on the field, no huddle offense. Not only do you give Maye a chance to go out there and run the no huddle at the end of a half, you also allow your team to run a no huddle. Operation, execution. You get the football with 30 seconds left, 35 seconds left. You got a timeout. That's what you work on. 35 seconds, a timeout. You're going to have good field position. What can you do? Get the plays in, right? Alex Van Pelt hasn't been a full-time offensive coordinator calling plays since 2009. You give Van Pelt a chance to run the no huddle from the sideline. Get those play calls in quickly. Get multiple play calls in at once. Let the quarterback's mind, right? Let it operate at a higher level. Challenge him a little bit. Let him run that no huddle. And then if Maye does a decent job and gets you down in the field goal position, now you get your special teams on the field and you let them have an operation and you see how they run their operation. Do they get on the field in a timely manner, right? Is the snap clean? Is the kick clean? Is everybody lined up where they're supposed to be? That's the stuff that Belichick would do that was never overlooked by me. The situational football stuff in the preseason especially. And that was a great opportunity for Mayo to take advantage of the situation, and he just let the clock die. Tick, 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 tick to zeros. Did not understand it last week against Carolina. Did not understand it last night against Philadelphia. But I thought Mayo had a good second half. He had the challenge on the spot. I did not think they were going to win that challenge. I was wrong. Mayo was right. Good for him. Threw the challenge flag, won the challenge. Change of possession. Good decision. The way he didn't use his timeouts in the first half, he used his timeouts in the fourth quarter. Good job by Mayo. Good clock management. Called the timeouts. Got the football back. Gave Bailey Zappi a chance. Until Fornadell snapped it into the ground. And then it was over. Just like that. But, he gave him a chance, right? So he called the timeouts. He gave Zappi and the offense a chance to run late game offense to try to win that game. Good job by him. And as I mentioned earlier, the operation overall. 1 penalty. There wasn't a lot of times where you're like, what the hell's going on here? There wasn't a lot of confusion on the field. I think there might have been one time they had 10 men on the field and they had to call a timeout. So that's, we can dock a point. But I thought Jerod Mayo last night was better than week 1, which is good because we all know he is on a learning curve. It's going to be steep. He's going to make mistakes, but is he going to be a repeat offender, which is why the timeout stuff really bugs me because that's a repeat offense. All right. Another guy I want to talk about here. Got to get a drink of water for a second. Apologize, but I've been talking a lot the last few hours. All right. Another guy I want to talk about. Alex Van Pelt. I thought Van Pelt had a good game. Now, we could all look at the screen pass to Hasty. It was a perfect call at a perfect time. Fantastic job by him. I really liked the read option call for Drake Maye. 3rd and goal. Smart play call. Perfect time. Perfect call. Easy walk-in touchdown. But mainly what I liked about Alex Van Pelt last night was that he called plays for Drake Maye that Maye is comfortable with. a lot of plays that you saw Drake Maye run at North Carolina, he ran some of those last night. He went with, shotgun a decent amount with Maye. He went empty with Maye. Nothing but receivers, right? Empty backfield. Shotgun formation. The read option that I mentioned earlier. He allowed Maye to take some deep shots, which is Maye's wheelhouse, throwing the football deep with that arm. And so I thought you saw an adjustment from Van Pelt. I know Zoe came out earlier this week and he criticized Van Pelt. He's, hey, the Patriots are trying to force Drake Maye to run their offense. Last night, they changed that. I don't know if they changed it because Zoe called them out. I don't know if they changed it because they woke up and felt differently. I don't know if this was all part of their quote-unquote plan. I have no idea, and I couldn't care less. The reason why I couldn't care less is because it made sense. I'm not even concerned as to why they got to where they got to last night. I'm just happy they got to where they got to. I don't want to see a coach, a play caller. I don't like stubbornness. If something's not working, if you think you can do something differently, if you think you can tweak some things to make your players better, then you do it. Don't get stuck in that box. And I thought last night, Van Pelt showing a little bit of versatility as a play caller and a game planner and putting some stuff into that plan last night where Drake Maye was more comfortable running, that kind of stuff made sense. So good job by AVP. The biggest thing of the night, though, of course, was Drake Maye. Seeing that progression. He has absolutely, unequivocally earned a legitimate shot at QB1. Put him in a competition. I'm not saying he should be playing week 1. I'm saying last night, he deserved the shot to get reps with the ones and to battle Jacoby Brissett, at least for the next couple of practices, to see how it all unfolds. He has earned that shot with his play last night. Back on 98.5 tomorrow from 2 to 5, solo, headlines as well. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review. Liking and commenting is huge if you're on YouTube. It helps us out so much. Takes like a second of your time. You can just say hi in the comments. Like it, comment, helps us. Everybody enjoy your weekend. Have a great Friday. Looks like we're going to have some good weather this weekend. I'll be back on Monday at 4 o'clock. Until then, this has been the Nick Cattle Show.